This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Tuesday, November 10th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. The fighting in Ethiopia's Tigray and Amhara regions continues Tuesday. Trucks packed with armed militia and pickups mounted with machine guns are rushing to the front line of a conflict some fear could escalate into a full-blown civil war. David Doyle has this update.
Hundreds have died in an escalating conflict in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region, sources on the government side said on Monday. Even as Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed sought to reassure the world that his country was not sliding into civil war. Abiy launched a military offensive in Tigray after accusing regional forces of attacking a federal military base in the town of Dansha. There on Monday, gold miner Meseret Zinabu recalled hearing the attack.
On
that day, we could hear a lot of gunfire. The whole village panicked. But thanks to Amhara regional special forces and the militiamen, they were able to save a lot of lives of the National Defense Forces.
A senior diplomat said Abiy had fallen back on support from Tigray's neighbouring Amhara after parts of the military's northern command went over to Tigrayan control. Reuters journalists travelling in Tigray and Amhara saw trucks packed with armed militia and pickups with mounted machine guns rushing to the front line in support of the federal government. A military official said clashes near the Tigray-Amhara border had killed nearly 500 Tigrayan fighters. 3 security sources said the Ethiopian army had also lost hundreds in the original battle in Dansha. Tigrayans dominated Ethiopian politics before Abiy came to power, after rebels from the ethnic group toppled Marxist military rule in 1991. That guerrilla conflict and a war with neighbouring Eritrea have left the region's forces battle-hardened. Including militia allies, they number up to 250,000 and possess significant hardware, according to experts. The conflict threatens to destabilize Africa's second most populous nation, but on Monday, Abiy sought to ease concerns, tweeting that our rule of law operation is aimed at guaranteeing peace and stability.
David Doyle of Reuters with that report. The United Nations talks on Libya's future are underway Tuesday in Tunisia. The discussions that opened Monday are aimed at ending nearly a decade of chaos and bloodshed by arranging elections. But obstacles remain despite progress in cementing last month's ceasefire. Acting UN Libya envoy Stephanie Williams is describing it as the best opportunity in 6 years to end the turmoil and warfare that have plagued the North African oil exporting country since 2011. The talks held among 75 participants chosen by the UN to represent an array of political viewpoints, regional interests, and social groups come as the main warring sides discuss how to implement a truce they agreed to in Geneva. Libya has been split since 2014 between rival factions in the west held by the internationally recognized Government of National Accord and the east home to Khalifa Haftar's Libyan National Army. Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara has won a third term with 94% of the vote. Final results showed Monday after an election that opposition parties boycotted and dismissed as illegal. Main opposition figures are facing criminal charges after denouncing the October 31st vote and creating a rival government in protest. Ouattara, however, signaled Monday evening that he was open to dialogue with the opposition to enable calm to return to the world's top cocoa-growing nation following violent protests before and after the election. Ouattara has invited former President Henri Konan Bedi for a meeting in the coming days. Bedi has sided with the opposition in boycotting the election and forming a parallel government. 6 Nigerians are facing prison terms of 10 years to life after a federal appeals court in the United Arab Emirates upheld their convictions for funding the terrorist group Boko Haram. According to the Daily Trust newspaper, the accused were initially tried and convicted last year following their arrest in 2017. The court in Abu Dhabi on Monday sentenced Surajo Abubakar Muhammad and Saleh Yusuf Adamu to life in prison. 4 others were each given a 10-year sentence. The newspaper reported the court judgment said that between 2015 and 2016, the accused transferred $782,000 from Dubai to Nigeria to benefit Boko Haram, even as associates defended their actions, saying there was nothing criminal about the transaction. Cancer cases are on the rise in Kenya, especially among women. Many can't afford the cost of wigs if cancer treatment causes them to lose their hair. But as Rudy Elmendorp reports for VOA, one woman is on a mission to bring a change.
Putting a smile on cancer patients' faces. That's what beautician Diana Akech does by providing free wigs in her Nairobi salon. 45-year-old Mary Nafula, a mother of 3, was diagnosed with cancer a year ago. Treatment saved Nafula's life, but her hair fell out, making her feel exposed. Now she finally has something to smile about.
Like what this salon has done to us today, she has instilled confidence in us, and through this we can live positively, we can embrace all the challenges that accompany us, knowing that we are going to heal.
Cancer is the 3rd leading cause of death in Kenya, according to the World Health Organization, and the numbers are rising, from 37,000 reported cases in 2012 to almost 48,000 currently. Dr. Gladwell Kiari is an oncologist at the Nairobi hospital. She attributes the rise to increased cancer screening and a change of lifestyle.
We are smoking more, we are taking alcohol more, our traditional diets have changed, and we no longer eat the traditional lifestyle foods that we used to. So we have more fatty foods, we have less water and greens in our food, more processed food.
The government responded with awareness campaigns and opening more diagnostic centers across the country. But most Kenyans who live on less than $3 a day cannot afford treatment. Nafula was fortunate enough to be able to pay for cancer therapy. And now having a wig, she's relieved of feeling stigmatized, especially on the streets and often in the Kenyan public transport vehicles called matatus.
I was very sick, I couldn't walk, and the matatu guy was like, "You sick people, you're supposed to take in an ambulance. You should not enter the matatu because cancer can infect us." I felt so bad.
Diana Akech started doing makeovers 5 years ago after a friend developed cancer. The friend lost her hair, but Akech gave her a wig.
And I shared the story on social media, and everybody started, nominating their friends. And my friend, my friend gave me the willpower to keep doing this. So yeah, she's the one who motivated me. She's in heaven right now, and I'm sure she's very proud of what I'm doing.
The wigs cost around $250 each and are paid for by donations from hospitals and companies. For those recovering from cancer, the journey is often long and painful. A wig can ease the pain and serve as a reminder that they are not alone. Ruud Elmendorp for VOA News, Nairobi.
A new research published in the Endocrine Society's Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that 80% of 216 COVID-19 patients at a university hospital in Spain had vitamin D deficiency. Men had lower vitamin D levels than women. COVID-19 patients with lower vitamin D levels also had raised serum levels of inflammatory markers. In another research by Northwestern University, scientists analyzed data from 10 countries and found patients with severe vitamin D deficiencies were twice as likely to suffer complications from COVID. For more on the importance of vitamin D and the coronavirus, Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu spoke with Dr. Ken Redcross.
As we're dealing with this pandemic, there's some things we have to recognize that have really come out of this, and it's the vitamin D story that hasn't really truly been told. And the coronavirus has allowed us to really set up a platform for vitamin D and why it's so important.
What is it about vitamin D that is so critical during this time of coronavirus?
Okay, so let's look at some of the disease states that we see that the coronavirus preys on certain patients. It tends to be lung disease, heart disease, obesity, and also diabetes. All four typically run rampant in the African American community and the Latino community in particular. And then you marry that with the fact, Lenore, that almost about 80% of African Americans, and really worldwide, are low in vitamin D, almost 80% of us. So what is kind of going on there? Well, one thing, everybody, is vitamin D is not particularly plentiful in our diets naturally. Things like milk and creams and butter, it's fortified, meaning that it's added. The other thing is when you see our brown skin, you have to recognize that the melanin blocks out the rays of the sun as well, which is the reason why we're so low. And I should say a third thing is that we're all stuck in this house. We're all stuck in this studio. We're not going out and getting the sun's rays. So therefore, everybody, we have to supplement our vitamin D. So if there's one message that I can get out, Lenore, worldwide, is that I want you to know your vitamin D levels. As I always joke with patients, I say, get on my level, which is between 40 and 60. So
is there a way we can tell? Are there some telltale signs that we don't have enough vitamins?
With vitamin D, it's interesting because a lot of my patients who are low in vitamin D, Lenore, they'll just have this sense of fatigue. And when their levels get back up, they always talk about this sense of well-being. Vitamin D is important for so many things. It's not just bone health, but it's also brain health, heart health. When I talk about vitamin D, don't forget, it's the importance of what vitamin D does for our immune system. It's not a treatment for the coronavirus, but it's the support of that immune system because you can't test your immune system, but you can test your vitamin D level and see exactly where you are. I also talk to patients about magnesium sometimes as well because magnesium is incredibly important to also make sure that vitamin D is absorbed properly and also help with the sleep and the immune system and for energy.
But what about other ways that can help support, whether we take supplement or not? What other ways can we get vitamins? I know you talked about the sun. Other things in terms of nutrition maybe we should reinforce?
Look, I'm not a fan of medications if we don't need them, or pills. So the only reason why I'm mentioning vitamin D and supplementation in this case, thank God it's inexpensive. But the other reason why I'm mentioning it is because it's kind of hard to get out of our diet. When you think about it, some of the things that are rich in vitamin D, fatty fish, such as sardines and salmon, you could get a little bit out of that, but not always enough daily to get you to that level. People will say milk. Well, Lenore, it's added to milk. Vitamin D is not naturally there. So I say this, everyone, because it's kind of tough to get vitamin D naturally. Now, you can go out in the sun and get a little bit of sunlight as well. But once again, we're talking about the daily benefits of this. So as we're looking at the best way to get the biggest benefits with vitamin D, and the reason why I wanted to make it a challenge is that I want everyone to know what their levels are, get the levels right. There's nothing better than a natural alternative, I feel, to get well and stay well.
Dr. Ken Redcross, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone. Stay well and stay blessed.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover during the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, U.S. President-elect Joe Biden shifts focus to governing a deeply divided nation as incumbent President Donald Trump goes to court seeking to block his victory. We'll be right back.
is about more than just sitting here and talking about women's issues. It's about listening to them
and bringing their opinions to the table and making sure their voices are heard.
Because our lived experiences, our stories, and our voices will help shape the next generation.
Welcome back to Africa 54. The campaign of U.S. President Donald Trump filed a lawsuit Monday in a Pennsylvania federal court seeking to block state officials from certifying President-elect Joe Biden's victory in the state. The lawsuit, brought by the campaign and two other registered voters, alleges that Pennsylvania's mail-in voting system lacked all the hallmarks of transparency and verifiability that were present for in-person voters. The lawsuit also claims Pennsylvania officials violated the U.S. Constitution by creating an illegal two-tiered voting system where voting in person was subject to more oversight than voting by mail. It was filed against Pennsylvania's Secretary of State and the boards of elections in Democratic-leaning counties that included Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. The Trump campaign and Republicans have brought numerous lawsuits since Election Day over alleged election irregularities, and judges have already tossed cases in Georgia and Michigan. World leaders have been giving their reactions to the victory of Joe Biden in the U.S. presidential election. But as Henry Ridgell reports from London, some U.S. rivals, including China and Russia, are awaiting the outcome of legal challenges to the result.
In Europe, perhaps the biggest celebrations were held in Ballina, Ireland, despite the coronavirus lockdown, the home of President-elect Joe Biden's great-great-great-grandfather.
It just hit us out of the blue, so it was exciting, but we're absolutely thrilled and just can't really put it into words, really.
Biden has often spoken of his pride in his Irish roots. He has warned Britain that its exit from the European Union must not jeopardise peace in Northern Ireland, and last year called British Prime Minister Boris Johnson a clone of Donald Trump. Boris Johnson said Sunday he was looking forward to working with the new administration.
I think there is far more that unites the government of this country and government in Washington any time, at any stage, than divides us.
The European Union also welcomed the election of Joe Biden.
Together, we will address pressing global challenges. The corona pandemic and its economic consequences, climate change and the loss of biodiversity, the necessary rule book for the digital economy and society, global security, and the reform of the rules-based multilateral system.
But Europe should not necessarily expect an easy ride, says analyst Inderjeet Palmer of City University London.
Given the increasingly competitive environment, I think the US will continue to drive hard bargains. The trade agreements with the EU and Britain will be not easy. And I think NATO, yes, I think they will demand the Europeans step up a lot more.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel appeared to acknowledge those challenges Monday.
Amerika ist und bleibt unser wichtigster Verbündeter.
America is and remains our most important ally, but it expects us, and rightly so, to make stronger efforts to take care of our security.
Für unsere Überzeugung in der Welt einzutreten.
Europe hopes that Joe Biden will seek to rejoin the Iran nuclear deal. Israel is vehemently opposed. In a video message congratulating Joe Biden, the Israeli Prime Minister did not mention the agreement.
I know him as a big friend of the State of Israel.
Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif wrote on Twitter, "Trump's gone in 70 days, but will remain here forever. Betting on outsiders to provide security is never a good gamble. We extend our hand to our neighbours for dialogue to resolve differences." China is in the midst of a trade war with Washington. Chinese state media said the election of Joe Biden offered more predictability. In Hong Kong, where pro-democracy protests continue against Beijing, some fear a softer approach from the United States.
I think at a time when totalitarian governance is rising in many countries, Biden's approach, though more peaceful or less forceful, is too gentlemanly.
Both Beijing and Moscow have yet to give official comment on Joe Biden's victory, noting that there are ongoing legal challenges to the result by incumbent Donald Trump. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
After winning a close election, Democratic President-elect Joe Biden now shifts focus to governing a deeply divided nation that is grappling with a deadly pandemic and a struggling economy. VOA's Brian Pardon reports.
President-elect Joe Biden ran on promises to expand access to health care, assistance for the working poor, and to develop clean energy industries that would generate millions of new jobs. His most immediate concern, however, will be addressing the surging coronavirus pandemic that has resulted in over 237,000 deaths in the U.S., according to Johns Hopkins University.
I will spare no effort, none, or any commitment to turn around this pandemic.
Biden formed a coronavirus task force Monday to focus on scaling up testing, increasing production of protective equipment for healthcare workers, and developing and distributing vaccines. But to pass his agenda, Biden will have to navigate entrenched partisan divisions that have intensified during outgoing President Donald Trump's term in office.
The divisions are deep. I have hope that we will move on a healing path over time. It will not happen quickly. It will not happen easily.
Biden could face formidable opposition from the Senate's top Republican, Mitch McConnell, who will remain majority leader and set the chamber's agenda if Republicans win one of two Georgia runoff races in January.
McConnell could dig his heels in and not allow many liberal choices.
At the same time, Biden is viewed as a consummate dealmaker, having served as a senator for decades and as former President Barack Obama's vice president. His rapport with McConnell and others will be put to the test.
He might be able to use that relational capital in order to build unlikely coalitions that we perhaps have not seen in the last 4 years.
Biden has emphasized the need for bipartisan cooperation to work for the common good.
To make progress, we have to stop treating our opponents as our enemies. They are not our enemies. They are Americans.
But the Democratic leader will also face pressure from progressives in his own party who want universal government-funded health care and aggressive measures to fight climate change. Some far-left Democrats, like New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, have already expressed frustration that after getting elected, moderate Democrats tend to abandon progressive causes while seeking deals with Republicans. Brian Padden, VOA News, Washington.
Vice President-elect Kamala Harris made history this week when she became the first woman ever to win election on a presidential ticket. VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson reports on the path that brought Harris to the second most powerful position in the U.S. government.
A history-making moment in the United States.
While I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last.
The 56-year-old Harris thanking her running mate, President-elect Joe Biden, and voters for choosing her to become the first Black and Indian American woman to serve as U.S. Vice President.
We've had women at the Supreme Court. We have Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker of the House in Congress, but never in the executive branch have we had a woman vice president, and still not president. But not only that, but to have a woman of color, a woman from immigrant parents who came to this country for a better life.
The daughter of an Indian mother and a Jamaican father, Harris grew up in Oakland, California. A mural of her now on the school she was bused to as a child as part of racial integration efforts.
She's broken so many glass ceilings for so many women.
A graduate of Howard University, an all-black college in Washington, D.C., Harris became the first black female San Francisco prosecutor beginning in 2004, and then California Attorney General in 2010.
Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up!
During Black Lives Matter protests this summer, some progressives complained Harris had been a much tougher prosecutor than she let on, took contradictory positions on the death penalty, and failed to hold police accountable for misconduct.
This is a moment in time that is requiring us to fight.
Harris first made history in California when she was elected to the U.S. Senate.
It's important that people see people in power that look like themselves.
Harris, who speaks often about her role as an aunt and a stepmother, is married to lawyer Doug Emhoff, who will now be the second gentleman, an entirely new position in White House history. And while the most important job for a vice president is to be ready to step in for the president if needed, analysts say Harris may also make use of her historic firsts.
And she can be a stateswoman representing the United States, but I think she'll travel around the United States as well to show that symbolism of what she's doing.
A new global role in the White House, celebrated halfway around the world in her ancestral village in India. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.